Welcome to another episode of the Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. My name is Creek, and I'm with my unprepared co-host. Fantastic, stupendous, wondrous, beautimous co-hosts, María, Sikora, and María, José, Munita.
Yeah, Creek didn't have a podcast today. I mean, I'm sorry, didn't have an adjective today. Yes. So unprepared is not us. We are prepared.
Yes. As often happens, I'm projecting my own weaknesses on others. So
this is true.
Speaking of eights, no, kidding. We're talking about eights today.
Coaching eights.
Coaching eights.
As if that were possible.
Yeah,
It is possible. Whether or not they'll listen is another. You can coach them. But Mario, why don't you tell us a little bit about eights, striving to feel powerful?
Well, eights are striving to feel powerful. Look, there's a lot of adjective about eights, and I don't know that I always say this, but it's not uncommon for me to say that eights are kind of like whiskey. You either love it or you don't, but you're going to have an opinion about it, and that's usually how people are around eights. They're rarely neutral with them, I find, and I'll let María José speak for herself, but in my experience, eights are either really great leaders or they're really toxic leaders, right? They tend to be fairly extreme in pretty much everything, that kind of comes with the territory. So they are people who, when they're in a good place and when they are, mature and reasonable, they can be excellent leaders. When they are not, they can be, real tyrants. I was thinking about this right before the podcast that, I've worked with a lot of eights over the years. Okay. I don't know if it's because they're disproportionately represented in leadership positions or just sort of migrate to me because I am an eight and can speak their language. But I do think that one of the reasons that eights often end up in leadership positions is because they are decisive. One key thing to understand about eights is that they do not like unmade decisions when a decision can be made, right?
Or is that just you?
No, I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty universal with eights, and so because they make decisions quickly and they want to move on, they end up kind of assuming leadership positions, right? Because leaders are the people who say, okay, we're going to go this way, and other people sort of follow or rebel. And it can be challenging to rebel against leaders against eights, because, it's like the saying about wrestling with a pig, you're going to get dirty and the pig likes it. So, not that many people can, stand up to the, the energy and the forcefulness of eights. So they end up in leadership positions very often. María José, what would you add? María José could give a PhD dissertation on dealing with eights, working with eights, and all that sort of stuff. She's got, what do we got? 15 years into it now, María José?
Yeah, and I've coached several. So it's, I just a couple of months ago I started coaching one, and they're textbook. It's just if you know how to do it, they are quite easy to coach, but you really need to know what to do about it.
Yeah. And that's an important point. If you're going to coach an eight, you have to know your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, I do like Riso and Hudson's word for the eight to some extent, the challenger. That is part of the eight's nature. I don't think it captures the whole story by any chance, but they do like to challenge things. And they will challenge you if you are their coach. And if you can't stand up to it, they're going to steamroll right over you and you're not going to make any progress. But if they respect you, then they'll listen to you and they will take your advice.
What are the connecting points have to do with how you coach an eight?
So the connecting points are point 2, the support strategy. The support strategy is point 5, striving to feel detached. And they kind of use that, as we all do, to support the preferred strategy of striving to feel powerful. So detaching is a way to just think about things in a more rational way, get some distance from things so that you can make the decisions that you need to make, so that you don't get too involved emotionally or too biased about something. So it's the support strategy which creates what we call the entrenched attitude, that it's aloof aggression. So it's like, okay, I'll go to battle, and we need to remember that 8s live in a permanent war, with the world. And it's not like they're fighting all the time, but they are thinking about their territory, their resources, who's the enemy, and watching out for kind of threats and things like that. So the support strategy, trying to feel detached, allows them to understand kind of what are those kind of stakeholders and those pieces, and plan a strategy. Point 2 is the neglected strategy. They sort of avoid it. And I think that it is because if you connect too much, you kind of become more vulnerable. But there's also this thing about, if I connect with too many people, you are all my responsibility. And I don't want that. I don't want to, because that goes against, in my mind as an 8, feeling powerful. If I have too much to worry about, to take care of, I'm more exposed.
Yeah, you made a comment there that I'll touch on, Maria Jose. You talked about the 8 seeing the world as battle, and that, as you're describing that, I'm thinking, well, of course. And
I thought you were going to argue that point. I'm glad you're not, because I have plenty of evidence.
You could find some way to argue that.
I was trying to remember. Which philosophers talked about life being red of tooth and claw, right? That might have been Hobbes, I'm not sure, or Rousseau. I can't remember right now. But, it's this idea that the world's a dangerous place, right? And it's, it is survival of the fittest, not in the way that Darwin actually meant it, but I've got to be bigger and stronger than you in order to, that's not what Darwin was saying. But for the 8, it's like, I got to be tougher than you, because otherwise you will take advantage of me. And what motivates me is to be powerful. And in this case, power, it's not all about controlling or dominating other people. That's just kind of a side benefit. It's the capacity to produce a result, right? You're just going to let that one go, huh? All right, go. All right, so it's it's the capacity to make something happen. Right?
Yeah, so sorry to disagree here, but I don't think it's a side benefit. It's a means to an end. I think that it's the opposite. Yeah. When you're in control, you can produce a result more easily than when you're not.
Yes, that's a good point, right? So, because, look, unless the 8 is really unhealthy, they don't want to be controlling other people. Honestly, they can see other people as kind of a burden, right? And so I don't want to have to put any more energy into other people than they need to, right? And Naranjo talks about the 8 being antisocial, right? And to some extent, I think there's some truth to that, right? Because, other people, like Maria Jose was just saying, if you're in my circle, now I'm responsible for you. Okay? And I can't just, let stuff happen to you or, let you be impacted by the world while I just sit by and watch. And so they're very careful about who they invest their time and energy in because of that. So I agree with you, Maria Jose. The control is a means to an end. And the means to an end really comes down to, I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, and
how I want.
How I want, and why should I not be able to, right?
If you dare stop me.
Well, if you get in the way of that, you're a problem in some way. Yeah. So.
Nature Red in Tooth and Claw is by the Victorian poet Alfred Lord Tennyson.
Really? Oh, boy, I was way off on that one. Okay.
Hobbes says something similar. The life of man solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short.
Yeah. That's right. I was conflating. Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, an 8 would agree with both of those statements.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they never lose. They're always right. That's one of the things. Always right.
So I was right.
Of course you're right. That's what you were saying all along.
That seems like both a strength and a weakness. What are some other strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, as Mara said, they're decisive, and that's a good thing until it isn't. If you're too impulsive about making a decision just for the sake of doing it, you might make the wrong one. But in general, I think it's a good thing to have that ability. Usually bold, confident most times. And I think that they have these thing that they push people and try to get the most out of them. So if they push you, it's because they believe in you and they think that there's more to get out of you. I always tell my clients who are not eights but work for an 8 that the moment the 8 stops pushing you, you need to worry about that, because that means that they gave up on you. They'll ignore you. Just go over you. You are just not there. If they keep pushing you, they believe that you can give more.
Yeah, and the other, absolutely right. They expect a lot of the people that are close to them. It's one of those things where, I'll carry you, but don't make it any harder on me, right? So you've got to try, right? Okay, you have to do your best, and if you're not, well, then I'm just going to give up on you. So forget about it. And there's also a pushing in the sense of that's how 8s learn their boundaries, right? 8s learn their boundaries by pushing against things to see if the boundary moves or if the boundary is solid. And if you stand up to them, if you're firm and respectful and, confident and, stand up for yourself, they will, they'll respect that. But it's if you think that you're going to get somewhere by giving in to them, then they're just going to keep pushing you and steamrolling over you, right? It can be kind of like a bully who, will just push against people until they stand up. But when you stand up to the bully, they respect you and they'll stop bullying you. A challenge, if we want to talk about some of the challenges that 8s have in that, we end up coaching 8s about, it's often their directness and bluntness and their kind of insensitivity, where they just say things that don't feel that they should be received, with some pain, but they are, and the 8 doesn't get it. It's the person who doesn't know their own strength, and so they.
I just watched The Devil Wears Prada 2, and I think that the Meryl Streep character, Miranda, it's an 8, and she keeps pushing, and I just thought of it. I had not thought about kind of Enneagram types in the movie, but I think she's probably an 8, and she now, because of today's kind of workplace rules and things like that, she has this assistant who is like, no, you cannot say that. She says something. It's like she looks at the assistant. It's like, not that. It's
Yeah. Well, that's how Lee is with me, right? You know, Lee's motto is Mario, don't get canceled, you know, and she's, always kind of, don't say that kind of thing, right? So,
yeah, I used to be that.
And you had to do that. Yeah, exactly.
But now I'm more like you, so it's I kind of have both roles.
We all must succumb eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Darth Vader, you know.
But it's because I've seen that it works, and I have so many clients that are 8s or similar that I've seen how being that way has benefits. So being blunt, being direct, saying things, naming things, it's something that people hire me for. So in a good way, I can say it in a nice way, but not sugarcoat it. And I'm kind of enjoying it, actually. And yeah, so I cannot be the one stopping you.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Yeah. So you were kind of joking of the about the coachability of 8s at the beginning of the episode, but do you approach the ATA process any different?
No, no. I mean, it's just, look, if you can help an 8 with the ATA process, it's always, how do I help this person get more of what it is they want? Okay, if it's a 4, how do I get them to feel more unique? If it's a 1, how do I get them to feel more perfect? With an 8, it's how do I help them feel more powerful? And again, that's the ability to get the results that you want. And when they start to see that, okay, if you change this behavior, you'll get more of what you want, then they're going to do it, right? Because why wouldn't I? That's what I want. And I don't know, look, in my experience, I find there are, and this could, I'm thinking about this carefully before I say it, because it could just be, something about me and, my reaction to people. But I find that once an 8 gets it, they make huge, fast progress, right? I mean, they really throw themselves into that. I find that with 1s as well, right? There are
3s,
certain types.
in my experience.
And 3s, yeah. And it's just, show me how to become more effective and get ahead, and I'm going to do what you say, as long as it's not bullshit. Right?
Yeah.
And the moment I smell that, then we're done.
Yeah, I would say that, and I agree with you, but I would say that the trick there is for a non-8 to speak the 8 language in a way that it's believable. That. So you need to understand the dynamics of power. You need to talk to them with a strength and a steadiness that it's convincing. If you seem to be weak or talk about things that seem to be, I don't know, too emotional or too soft, more than emotional, they will not believe you. So you need to kind of match their energy so that they believe that you can help them become more powerful. But it requires you to kind of come up with your own strength to match it.
Yeah. So key issues that, I end up working with 8s about is to soften the edge without losing the effectiveness, right? Of helping them see how they land on other people sometimes, how the way they say things are being perceived by the other person. That is it's the biggest trick, right? So I didn't mean to hurt your feelings is what the 8 is always thinking. But when they step back and think about it, it's like, well, of course that would have hurt your feelings if I told you were stupid or, whatever it is. So 8s will, say things that wound people. And the most challenging thing for 8s is that they often won't realize it, right? The other person won't stand up and say, hey, I don't want you to talk to me that way, or you can't talk to me that way, or something like that. People are less likely to push back on the 8. So they think everything's fine, right? They think people love them. They think, they're doing a great job. They think that they have everybody's respect. When sometimes people think, the guy's a jerk. I can't wait for him to fail. And this is a key thing. This is kind of what always happens with bullies, is when people say, hey, you know what, let's band together and kick this guy's ass. That will happen in organizations as well. People will kind of plot the downfall for an 8 without them understanding it or seeing it, and it can really undermine them. So the key lesson for 8s is to find ways to continue to be strong and effective while taking people with you, not driving them and not scaring them. There's a great line from the movie Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's going through this training, to be this great warrior, and his master asks him, Conan, what is the greatest good in life? And he says, to drive your enemy before you and hear the lamentations of their women, and that's how the 8 can get into thinking of, destroy your enemy and hear the weeping of their loved ones. That doesn't last that long before it starts to fail you. So.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tricks there is kind of for them to assess who they can kind of push harder and who needs more time to make it not so tough. And in their minds, being softer equals being weaker. It's like girls.
I think
girls would do it that way. It's like you need to be tough. But when they understand that they will be more effective in kind of influencing people if they adjust to different kinds of people, they get it.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think that there is this concern about seeming weak because if what's important to me is to be powerful, then I don't want to be perceived as weak. But I think that one of the bigger factors is time, right? I don't have time to coddle, and this is what you hear from 8s, right? I just don't have time to be nice to everybody and win them along and all this other sort of stuff. We got to get this done now is kind of the mindset of the 8, and so that insensitivity is usually it's not always because they think it's weak to be nice. I just don't have time to be nice is really what it comes down to often.
Have you seen it? My experience with some 8s is that they can seem very tough, but when it comes to firing people in their close circle, they really struggle with that. They kind of keep them there, even if they ignore them, but they have a hard time getting rid of them.
Yeah. Look, I've got there's an organization I was working with where the leader of the organization was an 8, and he would always talk about how the organization was a family, and it would treat it like a family. And we never really clicked because, and I wasn't coaching him, but I was doing some work with the team, so every so often he'd call me to get my advice. And I would keep telling him, you need to fire that person. And he didn't want to hear that, right? He felt that he failed, that he needed to do something, and that, geez, if I fire this person, they're going to lose their house. This is going to happen. That's going to happen, and so they can kind of lose perspective, right? It's this sense that, it's like their locus of control is so internal that they forget I don't control everything. Right. And so if I fire this person, it means I failed and I am responsible for whatever bad things happen to them. And I don't. Now, that's, again, it's kind of narcissistic to think that, because usually people do okay once they get, when they get fired. Yeah. So absolutely right. They can take way too long to take action when they should take it.
Yeah. There's another thing that I do when I coach 8. If I have the opportunity to be with them and their teams, I try to have them explain themselves, because it's not intuitive. 8s come across as as
Maria's making faces for the audio crowd.
okay, I think that we would all
No, you're right.
benefit from explaining ourselves better,
Yeah.
But in the case of 8, people read their strength or forcefulness as they perceive it as intimidating. So they just not say what they think. Now, when an 8 doesn't hear what they think it's there, they push even harder and they become more aggressive. So it's counterintuitive for people around 8. And when they understand that for 8, not hearing the whole truth, it's almost like a betrayal. They understand the logic, and it's easier for them to communicate better.
Yeah, that is an important thing for 8s to understand, that they often, no matter how hard they try to be nice, they can seem intimidating, right? That people just perceive something about them that can be a little bit scary, and so they have to, never lose sight of that they might be shutting people down or scaring people or turning them away when they have no idea that they're doing it. Right? It could just be, kind of somebody, I forget who it is, that refers to the resting 8 face, that I tend to have. And it's, it can intimidate people even when I'm not thinking that. And I actually often have to warn people, particularly, now that we live in a world of Zoom, that this face that I'm making doesn't mean I'm angry. That's just how I look when I'm thinking. But it looks like I'm ready to chew somebody's face off. So, so yeah, 8s have to realize that and be sensitive to it.
So the accelerator at point 8 is self-discipline. So it's not that you give them a task and ask them to be disciplined about it. It's things that make sense to them that they would benefit from being disciplined about, channeling their energy, their resources in a more kind of focused way and not just be all over the place. And that helps them feel like they're accomplishing something, they're getting there. It's having an effect. And whereas if they are, as I said, all over the place, it might feel like nothing makes enough progress. So they need to push more, but it's kind of never enough.
Yeah, it's related to that. One of the things that people don't understand about 8s is that, the wounding of the core quality, or the stunting of the core quality, is around vitality. Right, so there's this part of 8s that doesn't feel alive, and everybody looks at 8s and says, "Oh, they're so energetic, they're so forceful, they're so this, they're so that." But there can be this inner deadness that the 8 is experiencing, and when they kind of get trapped in that, it's a dark hole of a place, right? I mean, it's just leave me alone, don't talk to me, don't ask me for anything. I'm just going to sit here and, whatever.
Cry.
And, well, no, come on. I could be a girl about it, but no.
Don't get canceled.
Yeah. I'm just teasing, folks. No, it's just I'm turned off, right? It's like the machine has shut down is what the experience is like. Okay, and so they make up for this stunted vitality often through excessiveness. So when the button gets switched on, it is that kind of almost manic energy that Maria José was talking about, and it can be very unfocused and very unstructured, and it can either achieve a lot of things in a short time, or it can make a big mess pretty quickly as well. So the self-discipline for the 8 is finding ways to manage that energy better, to not think of themselves as either all the way on or all the way off, but functioning in a disciplined way and being methodical. And the analogy we always use is a fire hose. when nobody's holding on to the fire hose, it's just spraying all over the place and making a big mess. But when somebody is holding on to it, it can be quite effective in what it's meant to do, which is to put out the fire. So the 8 needs to learn ways of kind of putting some hands on the fire hose here and directing it in a thoughtful, deliberate, intentional way. And that creates kind of a more flowing energy. It's less binary. It's less on-off. It's less either kind of, immovable versus scattered and manic and excessive. And it's more constant and steady.
Can I close the episode?
Sure. Boy, you got a date or what? What's going on? You're in a hurry here, man. You're just moving this one right along, huh?
It's a holiday, and I'm hungry.
Okay. That's your explanation. That's fine.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Any final advice for the coaches out there who may be coaching 8s?
I think I'll probably repeat myself or Mario, but you have to go straight to showing them the value in terms of power of coaching them. Yeah. If you don't do that, you will not get their attention. And a useful way to do that is show them how they are being ineffective in some way. Show them something concrete that it's not working for them, that could improve. They're very kind of pragmatic in general. So it's not like theoretical power. It's like, okay, this is not working. You could be more effective in pushing this forward or influencing these people, and I can show you how. And you will get their attention. If it's just because you're going to be a better person or you should be nicer or things like that. I have this client now that just took on a job, and he told the HR person, "Why do you want me to get coaching?" I said, "Observe me first. If there's anything that you think I could improve on, we'll do it." And the HR person did it. And, well, I'm coaching him. But I know that, as I said, I need to match his energy and just move along and help him become more effective. And he's a really good coachee, He's completely in.
Yeah, I think, one of the... so I'm not a big fan of this whole idea of original wounds, right? And each of the types is responding to some original wound. And, people talk about how 8s, they're afraid of being vulnerable, and that's why they act the way they do. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, right? I mean, of course, nobody wants to be vulnerable. 8s don't want to be vulnerable. 8s don't want to show weakness or anything like that. But I think you do better coaching 8s if you realize that the reason they don't want to do those things is because they want to be powerful and to get stuff done. Right? And all of those things are things that, if I feel vulnerable or if I feel, afraid or whatever it is, well, then I can't go and do what it is I'm really after, which is to make an impact on things. So don't sit there waiting for them to have this vulnerability, and this, it's my job to help them see their inner vulnerability and all that stuff. Now, they might see that because, of course, they're human. So they have, weaknesses and vulnerabilities and fears just like everybody else. But that's not what's driving them. Okay, so don't think that your job is to help them get in touch with, their secret hidden vulnerabilities and all that sort of stuff, because you just won't get anywhere with them. Right? And if you try to coach them by trying to get them to get in touch with that, they're just going to see you as a roadblock and they're going to steamroll over you.
Great advice. Don't get steamrolled.
There you go.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Come back in 2 weeks. We'll be talking about 5s.
Right.
Cheers.
So long.